The room glowed warm with candlelight and the soft murmur of champagne laughter. 50 guests surrounded us at our engagement dinner, celebrating the future everyone believed we were building together. That's when he leaned in close, his lips barely brushing my ear. "I'm not saying this to be cruel," he murmured quietly. "I just don't believe in wasting time. I'm with you until something better works out." My breath stalled in my chest. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and clear. The string quartet in the corner kept playing their elegant arrangement. Someone at the far end of the table clinked their glass, calling for a toast. Laughter rippled through the room. I stared straight ahead, my smile still frozen in place for all the guests gathered around our engagement dinner table. My fingers gripped my champagne glass. He took a casual sip of his wine, completely relaxed, confident, like he had just commented on the weather instead of telling me I was temporary. Like this information was something I should simply accept and understand. I nodded once, my neck stiff. And he kept talking, his voice low and steady, as if what he was explaining made perfect sense. As if I should be grateful for his honesty. The photographer moved closer, adjusting her camera. I turned slightly and smiled for the picture that would capture this exact moment forever. His voice stayed soft and measured, as if he was explaining a perfectly reasonable business arrangement that any logical person would understand. "You're safe. You're stable. You know that about yourself," he said quietly, his breath warm against my ear. "But people grow. They evolve. New opportunities come along. We have to be realistic about these things." My fingers tightened around the napkin in my lap, twisting the fabric beneath the table where no one could see. I felt heat climb slowly up my neck, spreading across my cheeks. But I didn't turn toward him. I kept my face neutral, my expression calm. Across the table, his mother beamed at us with pure joy. She had been talking all evening about grandchildren and family traditions, about how perfect we were together. Someone raised their glass and congratulated us on finally setting a wedding date. More laughter. More clinking glasses. He smiled at them all like a man who believed the future was already perfectly secured. Like a man who had every piece arranged exactly where he wanted it. Like someone who knew he was in complete control. I sat very still and realized something crucial in that moment. He wasn't confessing. He wasn't being vulnerable or honest in some twisted way he thought I would appreciate. He was informing me, telling me my role, explaining the terms of an arrangement I had never agreed to. I laughed when someone at the table made a joke about marriage. I lifted my glass when my father stood to propose a toast about love and commitment. I let the photographer position me for another picture, angling my face to hide the way my jaw had locked tight. Inside my chest, something shifted and rearranged itself quietly. Something cold and clear settled into place where confusion and shock had been just moments before. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't cold feet before our wedding. This wasn't nervousness or fear making him say things he didn't mean. This was calculated. This was intentional. This was a man who had thought carefully about what he wanted to tell me and how he wanted to frame it. This was a man who believed I had no leverage, no options, no power in this relationship. He believed I needed him more than he needed me. He believed I would accept whatever terms he offered because I was too invested to walk away. Too attached to the future we had planned together. He believed I would swallow this information quietly and gratefully, relieved that he was being honest with me instead of just leaving without explanation. And sitting there at that table, surrounded by people celebrating our love, I understood something with perfect clarity. He was completely, entirely wrong about me. My name is Taryn Donovan. I was 33 years old, recently engaged to a man named Owen Fisher. And until that precise moment at our engagement dinner, I genuinely thought I knew the person I was planning to marry. I had built my life carefully over the years, deliberately, with intention. I had a career I was proud of in marketing management. I had savings I had accumulated through discipline and smart planning. I had friendships I had nurtured intentionally over time. I believed deeply in partnership. in building something real with someone you trusted, in loyalty and mutual respect and working together toward shared goals. What I didn't believe in was panic. What I didn't believe in was making emotional decisions based purely on shock or hurt feelings. So I nodded at Owen's words. I smiled at our guests. I cut another piece of the expensive engagement cake and ate it slowly while conversations flowed cheerfully around us. And I started listening. Really, carefully listening. Not to what Owen was saying to our guests in his charming, confident voice, but to what he had already revealed to me in those quiet whispers. He had shown me exactly how he saw our relationship. He had given me information most people spend years trying to uncover about their partners. He had handed me the complete truth, wrapped up in his own arrogance. I just needed to decide what to do with it. We had met 5 years earlier at a mutual friend's housewarming party in downtown Portland. I had been standing near the kitchen counter, talking with someone I barely knew about work projects, when Owen walked over and joined our conversation naturally. He was charming, but not in an overwhelming way that felt fake or practiced. He listened more than he talked. He was observant, noticing small details about what people said, curious about their lives and experiences. When he asked for my number 2 days later, I was genuinely interested. He seemed grounded, mature, like someone who had his life together. We dated for a year before he suggested moving in together. Into my apartment. The one-bedroom place I had been renting for 3 years in a neighborhood I loved. He liked that I was what he called low drama, that I didn't create problems or demand constant attention or make everything complicated. I liked that he seemed stable and practical, that he had goals and plans for his future. When it came time to sign the new lease with both our names, I paid the security deposit for both of us. He was between jobs at the time, transitioning careers. Seemed like a small thing. The kind of thing partners did for each other. I didn't mind helping. At the time it felt like generosity and partnership. Looking back now, I wondered when exactly I had become his safety net instead of his equal partner. I had supported Owen through his first career pivot from sales into marketing. I encouraged him when he doubted his abilities. I helped him prepare for interviews and review his portfolio. Then I supported him through his next pivot from marketing into business consulting. More encouragement, more reassurance that he was making the right choice. Then through his decision to start his own consulting firm, which required startup capital and long hours and constant emotional support when things got difficult. I reassured him when he doubted himself and his choices. I handled all the logistics of our daily life so he could focus on building his business. I took care of bills and groceries and scheduling and all the small details that kept everything running smoothly. When his income was unpredictable during the startup phase, I quietly covered more than my share of our expenses. I didn't mention it or keep score. That's what partners did. He called me his anchor, his foundation, the stable force that allowed him to take risks and explore new possibilities. I had smiled when he used those words. I had felt valued, important, essential to his success and happiness. I hadn't realized then what those words actually meant in his mind. I hadn't understood that anchors are objects, tools, things you drop into water to hold a ship steady in one place. Things you leave behind when you're finally ready to sail away. Back at the engagement dinner table, Owen squeezed my knee beneath the smooth linen tablecloth. His hand rested there possessively, the gesture looking affectionate to anyone watching us. "Don't overthink this, Taryn," he whispered, leaning close again. "You have a tendency to do that sometimes. Analyze everything. Just let it be what it is." I didn't respond. Didn't pull away. Didn't react at all. Instead, I catalogued every detail of this moment with perfect clarity. His tone. His word choices. The casual confidence in his touch. The complete certainty that I would process his confession exactly the way he wanted me to. The assumption that I would swallow this information quietly and continue playing my assigned role in his carefully planned life. I had learned something important about men like Owen over my 33 years. They mistake composure for weakness. They see a woman who doesn't cry or yell or make dramatic scenes, and they assume she has no power, no backbone, no options. They think calmness means acceptance. They think silence means agreement. They think a woman who doesn't react emotionally is a woman who can be easily controlled. They're wrong about all of it. But they never realize their mistake until it's far too late to matter. Owen released my knee and stood up to join a conversation with his college friends. He walked away laughing, completely comfortable and confident. I sat very still and began making plans. That night, after all the guests had finally left and we were back in my apartment, I waited until Owen was relaxed. Until he was sitting comfortably on the couch scrolling through his phone, still riding the pleasant high of the evening's success. The dishes from the caterers still sat untouched in the kitchen, waiting to be dealt with tomorrow. Then I asked him one simple, direct question. Have you ever said that to anyone else? He looked up from his phone, his expression briefly confused. Then understanding dawned across his face. He knew exactly what I was asking about, what I was referring to. Said what? He replied, buying himself a few seconds to think. What you told me at dinner tonight. About being with someone until something better works out. Have you told other women that same thing? He hesitated for exactly half a second. His eyes moved slightly left, then refocused back on me. I watched his face reorganize itself into an expression of gentle concern. No, he said firmly, his voice steady and convincing. I haven't. Because I've never been this honest with anyone before, Taryn. That's what I was trying to tell you. I trust you enough to be completely real about where I am emotionally. The lie landed too smoothly, too practiced, too perfect. This wasn't the first time he had said these words. It was just the first time he had said them to me. I didn't accuse him of lying. I didn't cry or raise my voice or demand more answers. I simply nodded slowly and stood up from the couch. I'm tired. I'm going to bed, I said quietly. He smiled, clearly relieved that I was dropping the subject so easily. Love you, he called after me as I walked toward the bedroom. I didn't respond. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the evening over and over, examining details I had missed or ignored before. Patterns I had explained away because I wanted to believe we were building something real together. Around 2 a.m, I gave up on sleep completely. I got up quietly and went to the living room. Owen was asleep in the bedroom, his phone charging on the nightstand beside him. I opened my laptop and started writing things down methodically, creating a document, recording information, events, times when his explanations hadn't quite matched reality, but I had chosen to trust him anyway. The business trip to Seattle that lasted 5 days instead of the 3 he had originally mentioned. The late nights at his new office that became routine. The weekend networking conference he attended alone even though I had offered to come with him. Names that appeared frequently in his casual stories about work. Patterns don't lie, I realized as dawn started breaking outside. People do. 2 weeks later I found the messages. Or rather, I let myself see what had probably been there all along, just waiting for me to look. Owen's laptop was open on the kitchen table one morning. He had gone to take a phone call in the other room, leaving his messages visible on the screen. I didn't touch anything. I just let my eyes drift across the conversation thread that was displayed. Nothing explicit. Nothing that would stand up as definitive proof in some kind of trial. But the tone was unmistakable to anyone paying attention. Familiar, comfortable, intimate. Inside jokes that suggested shared history. Casual references to experiences they had together. The kind of conversational shorthand that develops between people who talk constantly. Who know each other's rhythms and habits and preferences. Her name was Celia. I recognized it from stories Owen had told about his professional networking group. I read just enough to understand the situation before Owen returned to the room. She knew about me. She was aware Owen was engaged. But the way she wrote suggested she didn't see me as permanent or important. She was waiting, patient, confident that eventually Owen would make the choice she expected. She believed she was temporary too, I realized. Just from the opposite direction. She thought she was the future, and I was the past he was slowly leaving behind. Neither of us had understood that we were both just options in Owen's mind. Available choices he was keeping open until he decided which one served him better. I started watching Owen differently after that discovery. Not obviously. Not in any way he would notice or find suspicious. But I paid careful attention to things I had stopped questioning months or even years ago. The way he always placed his phone face down on tables and counters. Never casually face up the way most people did. The way he moved to another room to take certain calls, even though he claimed they were just work conversations. The way he talked about keeping options open and waiting for the right timing when discussing business decisions and career moves. The way he used words like eventually and when things align properly, instead of ever making concrete, definite plans about our shared future. I realized that Owen saw life as a ladder. Each rung was just a stepping stone to something higher, better, more valuable or advantageous. He had climbed from his previous girlfriend to me because I offered something she couldn't provide. Stability, financial security during his transitions, a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, useful professional connections through my marketing job. And now he was looking at the next rung up the ladder, evaluating, comparing features and benefits, trying to figure out if Celia offered something worth climbing toward. I was being used as a rung on someone else's ladder to success. Temporary platform. A tool that served a specific purpose until something more useful became available. The realization didn't hurt the way I expected. Instead, it clarified everything. I told no one what I had learned. Not my sister Michelle, who would have insisted on confronting Owen immediately. Not my best friend Kara, who would have demanded I pack my bags and leave that same night. Not my parents, who were already excitedly planning their outfits for our wedding. I needed clarity, not opinions. I needed to think through my options carefully without other people's emotions clouding my judgment. Their anger on my behalf would feel validating in the moment, but it would push me toward dramatic gestures that accomplished nothing useful. Revenge isn't loud when it's truly effective. Real revenge isn't about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. Strategic, careful. It's about making sure you exit a bad situation in the strongest possible position. I had learned that lesson in my career. When a client betrayed you or a colleague undermined you, the ones who came out ahead weren't the ones who made emotional scenes. They were the ones who quietly documented everything, protected their interests, and moved forward without unnecessary drama. I would apply the same principle here in my personal life. So I said nothing to anyone. I acted completely normal around Owen. I smiled when he came home from work. I asked about his day. I discussed wedding planning details when he brought them up. And quietly, privately, in ways he would never notice or suspect, I began preparing for a different future than the one everyone thought we were building together. I would exit this relationship on my terms. Not his. Not Celia's. 3 weeks after the engagement dinner, Owen approached me with a suggestion about our wedding budget. We were sitting at the kitchen table, finishing dinner. "I've been thinking," he said casually, setting down his fork. "Maybe we should scale back the wedding expenses a bit. Keep things more modest and simple. Just in case." "Just in case of what?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral and curious. "You know, in case my consulting business takes longer to become profitable than I originally projected. In case we need that money for other important things later. I just think we should be smart and careful about this." Owen had never been careful about spending money on things he wanted. New clothes from expensive stores. Frequent dinners at restaurants with clients. The latest technology and gadgets. But suddenly he wanted to be cautious with money that would go toward our supposedly shared future. Because he wasn't certain it was actually our shared future anymore. "That makes sense," I agreed easily, nodding. "Let's revise the budget and be more conservative." He looked visibly relieved. "I knew you'd understand. You're always so reasonable about these things." That night, after Owen fell asleep, I logged into our shared account where we had been pooling money for wedding expenses for the past 6 months. I transferred my contributions back to my personal account. All of it. Every single dollar I had deposited. If Owen wasn't certain about our future together, then neither was I. And I would protect my financial interests accordingly. He never mentioned noticing the transfer. I made an appointment with a therapist the following week. Not because I was falling apart emotionally. Not because I needed someone to validate my hurt feelings. I needed clarity. I needed to think through my options carefully without emotion distorting my judgment. The therapist, Dr. Lin, asked thoughtful questions during our first session about what I wanted from this situation, about what I could actually control, about the important difference between reacting and responding. Anger is completely normal and justified in your situation, she told me near the end of our session. But anger makes people sloppy. It pushes them to do things that feel satisfying in the moment but create bigger problems later. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Silence can be incredibly powerful, Dr. Lin continued. Taking your time to think clearly before you act. Planning your next steps carefully. That's not weakness, Taryn. That's wisdom. I left her office feeling more settled. More certain about the path forward. I wouldn't beg Owen to choose me over Celia. I wouldn't compete for his attention or try to prove my value. I wouldn't attempt to make him see what he was losing or appreciate what we had built together. I would simply exit, cleanly, strategically, in a way that left me in the strongest possible position for whatever came next. When someone shows you they see you as temporary, you don't fight to become permanent. You accept the information and make your own plans accordingly. That's not giving up. That's refusing to waste more time on someone who has already decided you're not worth keeping. Owen made a crucial mistake 2 weeks later. A small slip that revealed more than he intended. The kind of error that happens when someone is juggling too many stories and forgets which version they told to which person. We were having dinner at home, and he was talking enthusiastically about his business plans. About possibly relocating in a year or two to take advantage of better opportunities in growing markets. Where would we move? Asked, testing him carefully. Oh, probably Austin or maybe Denver, he said absently. His mind clearly elsewhere. The tech consulting scene is really strong in both cities. Much better networking possibilities than here. We should start researching neighborhoods there, I suggested, watching his face closely. He looked suddenly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Well, I mean, that's pretty far out in the future. A lot could change between now and then. Like what kinds of things? Press gently. Just, business developments, personal circumstances and situations. We don't really need to plan that far ahead quite yet. But his face had already told me everything I needed to know. When he said, probably Austin or Denver. He had been picturing a future that didn't include me at all. He caught himself mid-sentence and tried to walk it back, but the truth had already slipped out. I smiled and changed the subject smoothly, letting him think I hadn't noticed. But I had noticed. I noticed everything now. I started canceling wedding vendors systematically. Not obviously. Not all at once in a way that would raise questions. But methodically and carefully. Working within the contract windows that would allow me to recover deposits or minimize financial penalties. The florist first. Then the photographer we had hired after meeting with 6 different options. The cake designer. The live band. Each vendor received a polite, professional email explaining that we were postponing our wedding due to unexpected scheduling conflicts. Some asked if we wanted to rebook for a later date. I told them I would be in touch once we knew our new timeline. Owen didn't notice any of this happening. He was too busy with his business launch. Too focused on Celia and whatever future they were planning together behind my back. Too distracted by possibilities he thought were just starting to open up for him. He trusted completely that I was handling all the wedding logistics the way I always handled things. Competently. Quietly. Without needing his input or attention or involvement. He had no idea I was systematically dismantling the wedding that everyone still believed was happening in 4 months. My mother called occasionally to ask about specific details and decisions. I gave her vague, non-committal answers. Still deciding. Waiting to finalize some things with our schedules. She interpreted my hesitation as normal pre-wedding stress. She had absolutely no idea I was no longer planning a wedding at all. I was planning an exit instead. Through a mutual friend named Jordan who knew Celia professionally through industry events, I heard that she was growing increasingly impatient with Owen's vague promises and timelines. She was asking pointed questions about his engagement to me, wanting clarity and concrete answers about when he was planning to end things with me officially, wanting to know when he would make their relationship public and real. Apparently, being the other woman waiting quietly in the wings was less romantic and exciting than she had imagined it would be. She wanted decisions, commitments, a clear timeline she could plan her own life around. Owen was stalling, according to Jordan, giving Celia the same frustratingly vague promises he had given me countless times. Eventually, when the timing is exactly right, when circumstances align properly, when everything falls into place naturally, she was starting to realize what I had already learned the hard way. That Owen didn't make important decisions quickly or easily, that he kept all his options open for as long as humanly possible, that he wanted absolute certainty before committing to anything significant, which meant he wanted to be completely sure I was secured as his backup plan before making any moves toward Celia. He wanted to know that if things didn't work out with her, he could still return to the safety and stability I represented. I watched this entire situation play out from a distance, fascinated by how predictable Owen's behavior was, how he used identical tactics with both of us. But Celia didn't know what I knew. She still believed she was special, different, the one he would eventually choose for real. The dinner where everything finally ended wasn't dramatic or theatrical. I didn't plan it as some big confrontation scene. It simply happened one quiet evening when we were alone at my apartment, sitting across from each other at the small dining table. Owen was talking casually about wedding invitation designs, trying to engage me in decisions about fonts and paper quality. Just the two of us. No witnesses present. I set down my fork carefully and looked at him directly across the table. "I know," I said simply, my voice quiet and steady. His expression froze completely. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Know what?" "I know about Celia. I know you told me at our engagement dinner that I'm temporary. I know you're trying to figure out which option serves your interests better before you make any final decisions." His face emptied of all color. For a long, heavy moment, he said absolutely nothing. He just stared at me like he was trying to process what was happening. Then the words started tumbling out frantically. "Taryn, that's not what. I mean, you're completely misunderstanding." "I'm not," I interrupted calmly, my voice steady. "I'm understanding perfectly and clearly. You told me at our engagement dinner that you're with me until something better works out. Those were your exact words. I remember them precisely." "I didn't mean it the way it sounded," he tried desperately. "I was just trying to be honest about where I am emotionally. I thought you'd appreciate the honesty and openness." His face was emptying rapidly of confidence. Owen tried everything he could think of to reframe the situation, to explain it away, to soften the meaning of what he had said and what I had discovered. "You're taking this completely out of context," he insisted. "I was having a moment of doubt. Everyone has doubts before a wedding. It doesn't mean anything real." I didn't raise my voice, didn't show anger or hurt. I simply stated the truth clearly. "I won't compete with Celia for your attention and commitment," I said calmly. "I won't fight and argue to make you choose me. I withdraw from consideration entirely." The last word seemed to physically stun him. He stared at me like I had spoken in a foreign language he couldn't comprehend. "You can't just withdraw," he said, his voice rising with barely controlled panic. "This isn't a business transaction, Taryn. This is our relationship. This is our life together. No, I corrected gently but firmly. It's your business transaction. You're the one who turned our relationship into a comparison of available options. You're the one evaluating which choice serves you better. I'm simply declining to participate in your evaluation process anymore. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. He ran his hand through his hair repeatedly, a gesture he always made when stressed. You're being unreasonable, he tried. You're overreacting to something I said in a moment of. I'm being completely reasonable, I interrupted. I'm accepting the information you gave me and acting on it logically. You told me I'm temporary. So I'm removing myself from the situation entirely. It's actually very simple. The word withdraw had stunned him completely. Owen shifted rapidly into panic mode as the reality of the situation began sinking in. His confident facade crumbled completely. Promises started pouring out of him desperately. I made a terrible mistake. I was confused about what I wanted. I didn't know what I was saying that night. His voice got softer, more pleading. You're the one I actually want, Taryn. I see that so clearly now. I understand what I almost lost. I stayed seated calmly at the table, watching him perform this new version of himself. The regretful fiancé. The man who almost lost something precious and suddenly realized its value. More promises followed. Please, Taryn. Give me a chance to fix this. Let me prove to you that I choose you. That you're the one I want to build a life with. Regret poured out after the promises. Explanations about stress and pressure and confusion about the future. Let him talk. Let him say everything he thought I wanted to hear. Let him believe there might be some version of this conversation where I changed my mind and gave him another chance. But I had learned something crucial over these past weeks of careful observation and planning. People only value stability when it's gone. They only truly appreciate what they had when they suddenly can't have it anymore. Owen didn't actually want me. He wanted the option of having me available. He wanted to know I was still there as his backup plan if Celia didn't work out the way he hoped, if his next opportunity fell through. And I absolutely refused to be anyone's backup plan ever again. The next 2 days dissolved into a blur of desperate phone calls and text messages from Owen. He tried every approach he could think of. Every strategy. Every angle. Apologies. Detailed explanations. Elaborate promises that things would be completely different if I just gave him one more chance. He sent expensive flowers to my office with a card that said, I'm sorry. Love you. Please. My co-workers looked at me with concern and curiosity, but I didn't explain. He showed up at my apartment building at odd hours, asking through the intercom if we could talk for just a few minutes. I didn't let him in. He wrote long, emotional emails explaining how he had been going through some kind of personal crisis that made him say crazy things he didn't really mean. Things that didn't reflect his true feelings. I love you, he kept saying over and over. I don't want to lose you. You're everything to me. But his panic wasn't about losing me as a person. It was about losing the security and stability I represented in his life. The reliable foundation he had been standing on while he explored other possibilities. Celia stopped seeming so attractive to him once I was no longer a certain thing. Once I withdrew from his equation and created real uncertainty in his future. Suddenly, staying with me seemed like the safer, smarter choice. The known quantity. The option that wouldn't require him to take any real risks. Within days, apparently Celia had decided she was done with Owen's uncertainty and vague promises. She hadn't signed up for this kind of chaos and doubt. She walked away and moved on. He called me immediately to explain. Texted desperately. I blocked his number. The wedding was officially cancelled. I sent a brief, professional email to the few remaining vendors who still had us in their systems. I drafted a simple message to family members who had been actively involved in planning. Owen and I have decided not to move forward with the wedding. We appreciate your love and support, but we're both moving in different directions now. Thank you for understanding. No drama. No detailed explanations about what Owen had said or done. No requests for people to take sides or validate my decision. Friends started reaching out, asking questions about what had happened between us. I gave them the same straightforward answer every time. We realized we weren't compatible long-term. We wanted fundamentally different things. It's better that we figured this out now rather than after the wedding. That was completely true without being vindictive or cruel. It stated facts clearly without attacking Owen's character publicly. Most people accepted that simple explanation without pushing for more details. A few pushed harder, wanting gossip or drama. To those people I said honestly, Owen wasn't certain I was what he wanted for his future. So we both agreed it was time to move on. The wedding was cancelled. Friends learned the truth slowly, through Owen's continued silence and inability to explain what happened. I said nothing more than necessary. Truth spreads on its own when you let it. You don't have to force it. I moved to a new apartment exactly 6 weeks later. A smaller place on the other side of town. 1 bedroom instead of 2, but it was entirely mine. My name alone on the lease. My furniture arranged exactly the way I wanted it. The light was better here, streaming through larger windows in the mornings. The space felt quieter somehow. Lighter. Less heavy with history and expectations. Like I could breathe more fully and deeply than I had in years. I set up my home office in the corner of the living room with a view of the street below. I bought plants for the first time in years and actually remembered to water them regularly. I cooked meals I enjoyed without considering anyone else's preferences or schedule. My life felt quieter without Owen's constant presence and needs. But it also felt lighter, more spacious, more authentically mine. It felt strange at first, being completely alone after 5 years of partnership and shared space. But strange in a surprisingly good way. Like I was rediscovering parts of myself I had set aside to make room for someone else. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting to be chosen or valued. Not waiting for someone to decide I was worth keeping. Not waiting for circumstances to finally align in my favor. I was simply living my own life on my own terms. Making decisions based purely on what I wanted and needed. Building something that didn't require anyone's permission or approval. No more waiting to be chosen by someone who saw me as temporary. 2 months after I moved into my new apartment, a letter arrived at my address. The envelope was thick and expensive. Heavy paper. Carefully addressed in Owen's distinctive handwriting. He must have gotten my new address from my sister or a mutual friend. Someone who didn't know they shouldn't give it to him. I held the letter for a long time, feeling its weight in my hands. Part of me felt curious about what he had written. What explanation or justification he had finally crafted after all this time. But a bigger, wiser part of me didn't want to know. Didn't need to know what he had to say now. Opening that letter would invite Owen back into my mental and emotional space. It would give him renewed access to my thoughts and attention. It would allow him to occupy room in my mind that I had finally cleared out. Some doors don't deserve closure. Some endings are complete and final exactly as they are, without needing additional explanation or discussion. I looked at the envelope one more time, then walked to my paper shredder. I fed the letter through without opening it. Watched the machine pull it through slowly and transform it into thin strips. Felt absolutely nothing as Owen's carefully chosen words became confetti in my recycling bin. If Owen had something genuinely important to say, he could have said it months ago. He could have been honest from the beginning instead of treating me like a temporary option. He made his choices, made mine. There was nothing left to discuss between us. Looking back several months later, I realized something important that changed my entire perspective on what had happened. I hadn't lost anything by leaving Owen. I had actually lost something valuable by staying as long as I did after learning the truth about how he saw me. Every day I spent pretending things were fine, I was betraying myself. Every moment I waited for him to choose me, I was actively choosing him over my own dignity and self-respect. Owen had gambled that I would be too invested to walk away. Too afraid of being alone. Too worried about what people would think. too attached to the future we had supposedly been building together. He calculated wrong. He bet everything on my compliance and willingness to accept whatever he offered. He lost everything as a result. He walked away from our relationship completely empty-handed. He lost Celia when she realized he wasn't worth waiting for. He lost me. He lost the stability he had taken for granted. He lost the person who had supported him through every doubt and transition. I walked away with myself intact, with my dignity, with absolute clarity about what I would and wouldn't accept in my future. More than that, I walked away completely unavailable, not just to Owen, but to anyone who would try to make me an option instead of a priority. I had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Being chosen isn't the victory. Choosing yourself first, that's the real victory. He gambled on something better and walked away empty-handed. I walked forward, unavailable, unbothered, and finally completely free.